And for Gloria's sake, for the minutes, the commissioners present are John B. Lenke, Alvin Hill, Dave Poplawski, Jane Salcy, John Rice, and Ray Williams. And the chairman said he was probably going to be coming in around 7:30. Good news is I think this is going to be a pretty quick one because I don't think we've got a lot of controversy on the two remaining sections in the regular text, which are the two subsections on bonding. I think we just want to make sure that all that language is actually correct and reflects the actual practices you guys follow. Oh, here comes Randy too. So Gloria, Randy Blackmer also coming in now. All right, so let's share the screen and we'll proceed accordingly. Here we go. You guys got that?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so starting with section 8, bonding for improvements. Marla makes a comment here. Apparently there is a deletion of bonding for proposed roads and drainage, which I suspect was actually a transcription error, but let's just read the sentence or actually the paragraph. The applicant has the option of either constructing public improvements depicted on an approved plan or bonding public improvements. Such public improvements include proposed improvements to existing roads and drainage, erosion and sedimentation controls, utilities, rights of way and drainage, public or private, and other work necessary for public or private use such as open space, recreation, access roads or paths, lighting, fencing, etc. So it does appear correct. We don't seem to have proposed roads and drainage. So let's add those back in. I don't think that's controversial. Just as a general topic, does everybody remember when we talked about bonding earlier on, the differences between performance bonds and bonds? And I think that we established that the correct term was performance bonds, but now I don't remember what the incorrect term was. Was it surety bonds? I know Ray and Brian both sent me some material on that.
I think it was a maintenance bond.
Yeah, surety and performance bonds are the same. So I would agree with Ray. A maintenance bond is something different.
Okay, and that is a next section, I think, but so we'll get to that. So for the time being, we're fine. Okay, form of surety. Those forms are all fine. I just wanted to call out this deletion because in the first pass, it had been suggested in the discussion that we should be asking for a COI for the developer. And George actually, who works in that very industry, kind of sent me a long set of articles and whatever, pointing out that those COIs don't really operate in the way that's implied here. It's more of a snapshot in time. So I've suggested not adding that. If anybody has, again, any thoughts in there as to why we should be asking for a COI in this bonding process, let's bring it up now.
Yeah, if we're strictly talking about bonding process, I would agree that you would not need to talk about a certificate of insurance in the bonding process.
Yeah, like I think when it was suggested, it was in an abundance of let's cover all our bases, but I just don't think, and based on my very lengthy conversation with George, I am fairly convinced that he is correct here.
George O'Neill knows about insurance.
Yeah, I mean, that is his field, so.
Tara, if I may interrupt here.
Please.
are you, that first paragraph that you started reading,
Mhm.
are you assuming that's okay? Everything's okay?
Well, we've been through it on a first pass, John, but since the section is so short, we can go through it in more detail. These are very brief, and I have no problem with that. You want to go through? We can.
No, I was just reading what, listening to what you see, what I see what on the screen and what we amended back in 2019. And I was just looking if everything was encompassed in that paragraph that you had, that Tara was saying. Because the recreation, I was trying to read both at the same time, and where it says, you have that existing roads and drainage, erosion, sediment control, proposed utilities, and other work necessary for public or private use such as open space, recreation, access roads, paths, lighting, fencing, etc.
Mhm.
So is that all in there? Yeah, I can see that on that second line.
Yeah, so just
Okay.
so you know what the format is of what we're looking at, because you haven't been to many on this second pass through. I had created a whole clean draft, or what I've been calling the clean draft, with all of the changes. But then some folks requested of Marla that
Yep.
we go back to the original document and then do it as a red line. So I've essentially been editing two documents, one alongside the other. But in the discussion, we're looking at what is essentially very close to the existing text,
Yeah.
with some of the first pass edits included. And sort of making, you can see how like messy this stuff looks, right? So that we can see showing the work here, and then I carry it over into that edited form in the next day. So that's what we're looking
Yeah.
at here.
The other thing that was in, that's why I was trying to read that, but in this, this one here says, if a financial guarantee is not provided, the approved plans will be endorsed as conditionally approved, and no lot shall be conveyed until final approved subdivision plans are timely recorded. Final subdivision plans may be approved or on conditional approved subdivisions if a financial guarantee is provided for any unfinished public improvement work. So I don't know if it belongs in that, as you just said, I haven't been tuning into these things, and the reason I could do it tonight, because I had a meeting tomorrow night that I signed up for the Cemetery Association. But so do you feel, is that in there somewhere, a
So-
conditional improvement?
So can you read it to me slowly again, and then I can zip forward a little bit to see if it's in the following section.
Okay, after that, fencing, etc., it says if a financial guarantee is not provided, the approved plans will be endorsed as conditionally approved, parentheses, and no lot shall be conveyed until final approved subdivision plans are timely recorded. Final subdivision plans may be approved on conditionally approved subdivisions if a financial guarantee is provided for any unfinished public improvement work. So
I'm wondering if we put that in the earlier section. Let me zip up.
I don't know, that's why I just asked.
No,
him.
yeah,
I
that's
said, "No, I
good.
haven't been."
That's exactly what we want to know. We want to make sure that we caught everything.
It's the,
Yeah, there it is. And I think what happened is that this was, we found that text was either repeated or in a strange place. So earlier, where it discusses the actual application process, whatever it is, Article
yep, okay.
3,
All
I
right, yeah.
think.
Just
Yeah.
as long as you're comfortable, I just was
Well,
you
let's
know,
make sure that this is exactly
reading
the
what
same
we had.
thing. Yeah.
reading what we had.
Before release of any performance bond or before the commission endorses any record subdivision map to permit filing or recording with the town clerk when no performance bond has been posted, the applicant shall present construction plans meeting the standards of the regulations showing streets, drainage and other subdivision improvements as built, including the location, so it is different text, including the location of any water mains, sanitary sewers and gas mains, and also showing clearly where the as-built plans did. Okay, so that's just the as-built.
Mm,
I want to see if there is anything here about conditional improvement.
The one thing that comes to mind is that, you know, Jason's plan out in Quinnebog, where
Mhm.
we allowed him to, we didn't accept the road, but partial of it, and it hasn't been finished. So we want to make sure that we have some kind of a warrant guarantee, and we have that. And we know we did that with him. We reduced his bond.
Right. So let me go back down to where we were.
But if it's not in there, that he doesn't have to do it, you know?
Well, let's just want to see computation of costs.
Because if we don't have in there that we
So,
can.
so here's partial release.
Okay, yeah,
And here's failure to complete improvements.
yeah. Okay,
And here's release. So just do me one more favor, John, which is, I'm just gonna drop a note. And tell me what the you know, section letter number, whatever title is, and I'll just make a note to myself to review.
well, in the old book, it was on page 50, but we had a separate page made out. It was part of section 10 that you're working on now. Bonding for public improvements. I can drop off this sheet if you don't have that.
Well, I'm sure that I have it, but if
this
I
was
know
added
this,
in.
if I know the
It was-
section number, I can look right at it without you having to drop anything
Section
off.
10, it was amended, that section 10, Article 4, Section 10 was amended in 225-19. Bonding for public improvements, and it also had the financial guarantee. And the pledge of a savings account. And I think.
On page 50.
Pardon? Well, it was added in, so it didn't give a page. At least that's the way I have it in my book.
And Cindy, I think that's the same question you were asking me this afternoon or yesterday, and maybe I didn't understand you.
Yes, that was, but I'm looking on the website for the subdivision regulations to see where that was listed.
You mean the amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
You know what date that was in 2019?
225, February 25th.
All right, that'll be easier to look at than trying to find it through the regulation.
Article 4, Section 10. We amended that.
Okay.
Aren't you
Good.
glad I showed up tonight, Sarah?
I am glad you showed up tonight.
Uh,
Come on, John, we haven't had a fight in
yeah.
months.
Tara, this is Dave.
Hi, Dave.
It's agree to disagree.
What do you got, Dave?
So the certificate of insurance, I believe I was the one who brought that up
I think you
In the-
were.
in the previous discussions. And I don't claim to be an insurance man, but I stayed at a Hilton last night. If you look at the public improvements, and the reason I brought it up, the applicant has the option of either constructing public improvements, blah, blah, blah.
Or
But
bonding.
if the applicant is they can construct the public improvements, and that's why I was asking for the COI, because they're working on existing town infrastructure, right? So
They
If-
may be working on existing town infrastructure, yes.
That's right, drainage, existing
Yes.
roads, drainage. So that's where, I would feel a lot easier if they had the certificate of insurance, the town had a certificate of insurance for them working on infrastructure. If something happens, something's damaged, to current infrastructure, there needs to be some sort of a fallback to restore or to fix what was incorrect. So
So
that's
what
why I
you,
put that
so
in.
what you're actually saying is that the COI would be something you would ask for if there was no bonding and the construction was just what happening? I mean,
Well, I read it as the applicant has the option of either constructing public improvements themselves, right?
right?
Am I reading it wrong?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
So-
the subdivision regulations are not on our website. the
Yes,
old
they
ones.
are. You just, they're in a weird spot.
All right, tell me the weird spot, because all the minutes said was that we passed the amendment. It didn't say, it didn't spell out the amendment. So tell me the weird spot they're in.
Yeah, I have to stop the share to go look at the town website myself because I have to find it. It's not on the, I think it's not on the planning and zoning forms and documents page. But if you go to forms and documents and you go to the planning and development forms and documents, I think that's where it is. But if you're looking just on the planning and zoning commission documents, that is where the zoning regulations and zoning map got placed. And that's like a legacy structure, which I should probably change.
Okay, so I'm not getting, so go to forms and documents on the
hold on.
planning and zoning page, right?
Yeah. And then that'll take you to the forms and documents page. But if you scroll up or down, you should see that there are other groups
Oh,
of
yeah.
forms and documents. And I believe that you will find the subdivision regulations under the planning and development forms and documents, not under the planning and zoning commission forms
All right,
and
it says planning
documents.
and development, plan of conservation, develop parcel map, Thompson Business Development Guide. Oh, it could be a mistake here. Let me just check something. You have subdivision regulations twice. I mean, subdivision application twice. Nope, that's application. Check this one. Oh, subdivision regulations. Okay, I got it.
You
Okay.
got it. Okay.
All right, can I, I'm going to address Dave. I just want to ask one more time, just make sure I understand this question. Dave, are you saying if something is installed improperly or it gets damaged, that you would fall under the certificate of insurance? Was that your question? Just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yes, yeah,
Okay, so if that would not fall under certificate of insurance, if something is installed improperly or things of that nature doesn't follow the guidelines that either a designer is providing or we're providing, that falls under the performance bond. The certificate of insurance is strictly for insurance reasons. So like, let's just say something outside of the installation gets damaged, that would fall under the contractor's general liability clause, which I am waiting to hear. Like, this section is talking about bonding. So a certificate of insurance wouldn't fall under here, but I am expecting it to see it somewhere else in this document, because myself as a contractor, if I'm in an existing building and I'm not doing work in a certain segment of the building, but all of a sudden there's something happens to that other side that I caused, would be under the general liability of my company.
Right.
And if it happens to be fire, theft, or flood, then that would be a builder's risk policy. That's something different because it's installed work at that time. So I don't know if I'm making myself clear here, but
you totally are, Brian, and Cindy jumped in, so I couldn't totally
Yeah.
finish what I was saying, so that's why I brought it up. I brought it up in this section because the applicant has the option of either constructing public improvements depicted on an approved plan or bonding, right?
Yeah.
And then bonding, blah, 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 it just keeps going down.
Yeah.
That's why I brought it up last time. So,
Sure.
so yeah, later on, there needs to be something, and I don't think there is currently, but there needs to be something that, you know, has tangible value to the contractor for damages to current infrastructure. We're on the same page.
Correct. And I don't want the word to be rather than a certificate of insurance. A certificate of insurance includes general liability, Tira. So there's definitely a need for general liability and an overall certificate of insurance. Maybe not in this particular section in bonding, but somewhere there should be one.
Yes.
Right. And
That's right.
And I'm trying to sort of think my way through the logic of it. So it seems to me that the logic of it would suggest that such demonstration of, you know, professional insurance, whatever, you know, general liability insurance, of which a COI is a part, is something that would actually be a part of what? The application process before approval even happens, right? Because But
Yes.
is it even
Yes.
the Planning and Zoning Commission, or is it the building office? Is
I
it the
would
pla-
say
No.
I have to submit it for the building office when I submit something as part of my permit approval. I have to prove certificate of insurance is credible. So that's where it would be.
So this is a point that's come up in other contexts when referring to requirements of other departments or commissions or boards, is that if it's not actually the Planning and Zoning Commission that is the body requiring that document, right? That if that is going through the building office, our regulations, be they the zoning regulations or the subdivision regulations, don't govern their behavior, right? Those are building code things. So perhaps, and I'm just positing this, right? Perhaps that's why you don't see a reference to that in the subdivision regulations, because it's not really a part of the approval of the plan.
Quite possible.
But it should be.
Whereas the
Yeah.
bonding is a part of the approval of the plan, presumably, and I'm assuming here, just based on what I'm hearing, because the building office isn't asking for the bond.
Right.
Should we probably get in touch with either Terry or
Donna,
Donna and ask them if they look into that, you know, so that we're cross-referencing with the two commissions?
yeah, because this has come up in a couple of instances, and they have been able to clarify. It's a little complicated in that neither of those people is in the office a lot. Terry has a very, very part-time schedule, and Donna is working through some earned personal time. So my access to her is not as good as it sometimes is, but that is still an excellent point. Ray Williams
Tara,
suggests.
I don't,
Sarah, the only thing I'm thinking is that because the public improvement is, if they're gonna take it on their own,
Mhm.
the public improvement is part of the subdivision plan that we're approving, then all of that should stay at P and Z.
Yeah.
It should be here. It shouldn't, it's all part of
Yeah.
the one
yeah,
file.
I agree.
I agree, the same thing, Brian. I mean, David, is that I don't think the building office wants to get into that. Because I think they're more with the construction of building that stuff. And I think the what I was reading before, the only thing that's not in that paragraph that you have there, and I think it's covered later on, but Terry, you tell me, it says after it was depicted on an approved plan, you see that second sentence?
Yep.
Such is or providing a financial guarantee for the completion of public improvements. I think that's what David's getting somewhat involved, is that the public improvements, if they're running the drainage into the town drainage system, uh, they're gonna have to some kind of financial guarantee that it's gonna be done right.
Can I interrupt in here?
Go ahead. That's what we're here
Yeah.
for.
That amendment was for surety bond that we passed in February 2019, was for surety, to add surety bond to the.
Yeah, because we never had a bank be allowed to do it. There's always a cash bond or some other
Right,
bond.
exactly.
Yeah. So
That's
I just want to third, I guess, Poplawski and Rice for that as well, to include that. Because the certificate of insurance paperwork
Yeah.
it takes me 10 seconds to get that from my agent. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not a big
right.
deal. One
Right.
thing that
So I just want to go back to the, again, very lengthy conversation that I had with George about this. Because he, called to ask, well, why do they want to do this? And I believe at the time I made some version of these points, right? And all he was saying was that COI effectively doesn't apply almost as soon as it's issued, like as soon as you, and I wish I could remember now because it's months and months ago, but it was a very convincing argument when he made
All right,
it.
well, I'll explain what he's talking about. Just because
Okay.
you get a separate certificate of insurance, he's technically correct. There's also various endorsement policies that support that certificate of insurance. If you actually read a certificate of insurance, it actually is meaningless until the endorsements are provided, right? So I will support George on that for sure. My point here is the way it's being brought up, I think where we're writing all this about COI is not appropriate. It should be somewhere else, right? And there's also, for us to like approve a certificate of insurance, you have to provide that contractor some sort of guidance on the limits of the policy, right?
Right.
And everyone's policies are different, right? So I think that's where George is going, is in order for us to request something, we have to provide the guidance on what we're requesting, right? So, so maybe that's where he was going.
Right, and that is exactly what we do when we go out to RFP for anything, right? We have our
Sure.
insurance requirements, and that comes back as a COI, and that is definitely a part of the standard form anytime we go out
Sure.
to bid.
Sure.
Okay, so Brian, this is going back years and years and years ago for me. But when we were in the contracting business and we had a government contracts,
Yeah.
we had to get certificate of insurance. And at that time, I was under the understanding that the certificate of insurance guaranteed the completion of the job, so that if we didn't complete it,
No, that's
somebody had to.
That's
not
what the
what the-
bond does.
that's what the bond does. And I'm also going to add in, that's what
But the
bond
government
does.
was fine with my certificate of insurance.
Well, they were completely wrong, Cindy. So congratulations for making it through
Okay.
all those years. I'm
Now, this
100%
is
right.
quite a few years ago, so my memory might be a little foggy, but I remember having to go to John Gahan and say, I need a certificate of insurance so I can,
Yeah.
get.
A bond
get
gets
the
you through a
shot.
job. There's three things: a performance bond. One thing that I'm going to bring up here, as far as bonds go, we continuously talk about a performance bond, but usually it's a performance and payment bond, and they come together. Why are we not talking about payment bonds in our documents? Is there a particular reason? Maybe it just wasn't part of the old regs, but I would like for someone to be able to answer me, why aren't we seeking a payment bond? Meaning if a developer goes out of business or a contractor goes out of business and we have a contract with them and they did not pay their sub-tier subs, someone has to pay for those. So that's why I'm looking for a payment bond. Performance bonds are for the completion of the work, but payment bonds take care of the subcontractors. And what I mean by that is subcontractors for like a tier 1 or tier 2. Usually it doesn't go beyond a tier 3. If it's a sub of a sub of a sub, it only goes to the first 2 tiers. But Nowhere in our documents do we talk about payment bonds, and I'm just curious to know why.
And I am going to go out on a limb and say probably nobody on this call could answer that question.
Yeah.
Right, because we're trying to get into the mindset of something that was written many, many years ago, not
Yeah.
by any of the people here.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we need to, I just want to note that we should be having maybe our legal team look at that. I don't want to request something that is inappropriate, but in the work that I do, those two things come together always, performance and payment bonds all the time. I cannot do a job without both in hand.
But Brian, on some of the projects that we've been working on, that's in the contract when we sign it with the awardee, so to speak, is that's all spelled out, because I know when I read all that stuff, it's in there. We make sure that the town is not liable to pay the subcontractors.
But that's for work that the town is directly contracting. Is that the difference? Because the town isn't actually contracting this work. It's allowing somebody to enter into contracts as a private entity. I mean, is that the difference? It may be, it may not be. I don't know.
Now that you say that, it might.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about like what we're trying to do here with town. I mean, I know as myself as a contractor, I can't do it without it. Right. In any regard, a city-owned project, a state-owned project, a town-owned building, they ask me for that every single time.
Yeah, because they don't want to be liable to pay the subcontractors when a guy
Of course not.
goes out of business.
Of
Yeah.
course not. So I'm saying we should be talking about it here for ourselves as well, somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't think it's a big deal to add a couple of words in there saying that, there's a requirement.
Essentially, all you need would do is just search for performance and just add the word payment next to that too.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
So far, all this talk about different kinds of insurance and whatnot is all over my head. Do we need to have somebody that, I appreciate what you're saying, Brian, but do we need to have somebody that's in the business of writing this insurance to tell us what we need to require?
George O'Neill would have the answer.
I
He
don't
should
think
be on the
so.
call.
I don't think so. I think just that statement, and then when they provide that insurance certificate, well, all you have to do is read it. And it says that the town would not, or we would be responsible for it, for the payment to the subs. I mean, that's what.
Usually the way that I operate is, let's just say I have a contract for $40 million. Okay. I have to bond performance and payment bond for $40 million every single time with my surety company.
Right.
Now I know the town does it a little different. We kind of come up with our own bonding figures. So maybe that plays into this, and that's maybe a little bit over my head. I just know if we're under an agreement, like the roofing contractor, Imperial, that just did the roof at the school, they had a contract for whatever, $2 million. They would have to get a performance and payment bond for $2 million. And I can't remember, I'm pretty sure that they did on that job, because I was paying attention to that at that time. But we should be doing that for subdivision people as well, for developers. They have an equal amount of risk just as anyone else with this kind of stuff.
So it feels to me like where we're leaning with this conversation is that way up in the application requirements, we should be referencing these, whatever this form of insurance guarantee is, as a required document at some point in that application process. I would tend to agree that because that is separate from bonding, we aren't necessarily referring to it in bonding. That doesn't mean the statement doesn't have value in that earlier section. And to Ray's point, I think I should find out what exactly subdivision developers have an obligation to produce for the building office. Because if some of the things that we are suggesting here are a part of their process, then our regulations do not govern that. But if it's not a part of their process, then to go to Randy's point, in that final review by council, because no matter what happens, right, our final draft, before it gets published, certainly before it gets published for real, and possibly before it gets published for public comment, I haven't quite worked the logistics of that through my head yet, needs to be reviewed by council to make sure that it's legally correct. And I can therefore call to council's attention, hey, we have these questions about the processes of bonding and insurance guarantees.
Yep, that sounds good.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
Is
I'll go one step further and say it's the builder's risk policy too, but we'll get to that later. I won't forget. When this comes.
All right, so we've just sort of flogged the COI horse for a bit. Is it dead yet?
That's why I'm here, son.
See you live in the join up, John. This was just a simple language question. It might be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Bond secured by cash deposit shall be treated as followed. A certified check, cashier's check, or cash shall be delivered to the treasurer of the town of Thompson. I just question, is the person they're delivering it to the treasurer or the finance director? They are actually the same person, but does the capacity matter? That might be a distinction without a difference. Does anybody have any thoughts there? I mean, I can ask Guy that tomorrow. Again, since they are for the town of Thompson, one and the same person, they're going to the same person. I just wonder if the capacity in which they are receiving the bond matters.
Well, I think the treasurer is the one that would review it. Because he has two titles, as was explained last night, the selectmen's meeting when they approve hiring him. He was a treasurer and the finance director, almost two separate entities or responsibilities. So I think it's the treasurer that works with the bank or deposits that money into the bank. So I'm good with treasurer,
Okay.
just for me. Everybody else can pipe in, but
Just
I mean,
ask tomorrow what.
Yeah, I'll
we
ask Guy
should do as
tomorrow.
Treasurer or finance director. I agree with John. I think it is treasurer, but I don't pretend to know what I'm talking about on this.
Go down to next. Side note, add checkbox to renewal form to review bond. What does that note mean? For subdivisions requiring more than 3 years to complete, the performance bond shall increase in the amount of 5% per year after the third year to compensate for inflation costs until improvements are completed. And the note is add checkbox to renewal form to review. Okay, so that's really not within the text. Cindy, we do have copies of the renewal form, right, that we can include as in the appendix?
No, there's no copies of renewal forms.
We
I've
don't,
never seen one.
we don't have
no.
renewal forms?
No,
what
I've
do-
never seen one.
What do they do for their renewals?
We go up to the treasurer, to the treasurer, the finance director to renew it. Once you approve it, I send the approval, the motion to approve it up to the finance director.
Okay, so it's not a separate form or application for
No,
renewal?
but if you want to do that, then we have to develop one.
No, if that, there's no need to create a new step unless you feel the step has been missing
Well, that's up to the commission members.
And I think, Tara, I think well, one of the concerns is that, as to who follows up, because somebody takes out that bond, a performance bond for 2 years, and then all of a sudden the contractor doesn't pay that fee the third year. It's, nobody knows about it.
Actually, what they do is they bring me in a copy. That's what they, now I'm thinking in my head how it's done. The contractor brings me in a copy and I bring that up to Orla. Well, I brought it up to Orla.
Yeah, but when the date of expiration,
Okay,
yeah, do you follow up on that date? I wouldn't think so, because I think you got
actually,
too many other things to do, but
you're right, John.
no, I mean, so that was, that performance bond can expire and we don't know about it. I don't know how we correct that.
So this is so this should actually be a different comment, which is, what is the internal system
That
that prompts?
provides the continue, or the expiration, the
The
check on
monitors.
the expiration date of that bond, to follow up on that expiration date to make sure it's still active or renewed, I think is the term, rather than active.
Cindy, in the new permitting system, which I know doesn't include our permits yet, or maybe not the complicated permits yet, does it include any of the simple permits or just the building office permits, the online system?
The online system only has the office permits because Scott has never gotten back to me about the forms, the edited forms I gave him. And this has been over a year. So I don't know what to tell you about that.
Yeah, if we had more on there, I was going to ask you, I would think that online system would enable you to enter expiration dates, which then
Yeah.
would give you notifiers, but we
Yeah.
don't have those forms in that system.
No, and if we had the forms, then if it was, I would have a hard copy. You just have to, it's just like with the gravel permits, you just have to do a spreadsheet as to when subdivisions are up for renewal. So I guess that's another process that we have to create in the office. I mean, there is a whole list of subdivisions that Mary Ann did, but it's always in the back of my mind to look at them and see what's going on with past ones, but there's just never been enough time to do that. It's not that I wouldn't like to do it, guys. I certainly would.
Should we just start it from now on with these new subdivisions with the spreadsheet?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's adjust this comment a little bit. Follow with the permit link to add the subdivision process. Okay, that's one piece, but that's slightly out of our control. So ZEO to create a spreadsheet system with alerts.
Well, you're typing that in, Tara. Just, Brian, a question for you. Is that reasonable that after the third year to add 5%?
Sure. It doesn't sound unreasonable to me, John. No.
Okay.
I was actually just looking at my own bonds to see if there was an expiration date, and let's just say the recent bonds that I have provided my clients, they do not expire. But what happens usually is my bonding company will send me a piece of paper and say, hey, where are you in the project? And it asks me a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah.
Brian, I've been on the receiving end of bonds, and they'll notify you if the bond lapses. They will not notify you if the bond expires.
Yeah.
The
Usually,
holder.
yeah, that's usually correct. Yeah.
I've also gotten letters only actually on, the gravel operation. Pat, I forget what her last name is.
Brzezinski?
Yeah, that comes in and renews it. I've gotten letters from her bank asking me about, status of the application, the status of the
Yeah.
permit.
Now you're shaking my brain a little bit. Yeah. So my clients are also listed on my bonds, obviously. So yeah, they get the same piece of paper saying, hey, what's going on with this? Because sometimes, depending on what's going on, the bonding company will want a release from the client saying, yeah, they're happy with everything, and then be able to release that bond. But that doesn't happen very often.
Tara, I don't know if you can check with Rich or someone as this gets reviewed, but my only question is 5% legal? Can we, is that something that we can do as a P and Z? And if it is, could it fluctuate? I mean, I know material prices that I've seen have gone up.
7.9%. I know.
12,
7.9 for
14,
me.
15,
David,
so-
that's why I asked Brian that question, if that was reasonable, that 5%. I just wanted
Yeah.
to put him on the hook, that's all.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Sean. I like the word reasonable is good for 5%, but today's day and age is a little bit more than that, but that's not the norm. At least hopefully.
Yeah, do we have any, can we? Yeah, you got it.
Well, I guess, and again, I'm just spitballing this, right? It's like when you lock in your oil rate, right? You're locking in a rate based on projections. You may win or lose in that deal. Right, so the 5% increase is what? It's just a baseline. I mean, well, maybe you can have a fluctuating amount, but that seems like it would be hard to regulate for.
Yeah, no, I'm just, can we have that in the regs? The first question. And if we can it be increased or decreased? That's, I'm not trying to make it a fluctuating or that,
Yeah.
I mean, these regulations aren't going to be touched for some time, right? So I just want to make sure that.
That is the hope, right? That these
Yes.
ones will stay stable because the division of land is by its very nature more stable and lasting than the uses upon the land, which is why we can amend the zoning regulations year on year to be flexible, but that would create chaos to do with the subdivision regulations. Okay, I mean, tonight's session looks like it's leaving me with a lot of homework and questions to do, which is not a problem at all. That's exactly, what these processes are for. It might mean I turn it around to you guys a little slower than within 24 hours, but that's not a big problem either. Marla just wants to know if binder course is defined. I know we talked about binder courses when we were talking about road construction. I mean, how would you define a binder course, Mr. Santos?
Yeah, I'd call it a sub base to the finish course.
Right. And it's usually 1.5 inches, and then you add the 3 inches after that. Right,
Actually,
Brian? At
It's
least that's
actually,
what-
it's reverse, actually, 3 inches,
Yeah.
1.5 inches. But I thought we actually had a detail of our roadway construction somewhere in here that kind of outlines that.
We do. We talked about it in an earlier section. I think Marla's making the point to have as a definition within the glossary.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's the way I took this, is to come up with a definition of what a binder course is.
I mean, I don't mind adding definitions for terms that we refer to.
Yeah.
We took out definitions for terms that do not get referred to, that we're just kicking around for, I don't know, to look pretty. But if there's any question as to what a binder course would be for a person reading this, then yes, it should be defined. So the simple definition would be the subbase
And I'm okay
to
with Merriam-Webster's
finish.
definition. A coarse aggregate bound with bitumen between the foundation and the wearing course of an asphalt pavement. Okay with that too.
You're going to have to read that to me much more slowly. A coarse aggregate,
Bound
yeah,
with bitumen,
Bituminous.
yeah, or bituminous, between the foundation and the wearing course of an asphalt pavement.
oh, I like that. It's elegant. And that was Merriam-Webster.
You got it.
/ Brian Santos.
No, I'll write my name there. Thanks, John Wright.
Okay, that's a simple add. Okay, let's see. Failure to complete improvements. Is there a way to spell out the various remedies? All right, let's read this paragraph. Where surety has been posted and required improvements have not been completed within the time required, the commission may thereupon declare the subdivider to be in default and withdraw the total amount of surety from the pledged bank account and proceed to complete the improvements. All costs the town may accrue in completing the work include the value of the time of its public officials, employees, and attorney fees. That should be including, not include. All costs the town may accrue in completing the work, including the value of the time of its public officials, employees, and attorney fees, shall be debited against the funds so withdrawn. If for some reason the security is insufficient to pay for all costs to the town, the subdivider / owner shall remain liable for such costs in excess of the security. So in this highlighted comment is one that I dropped in after our first pass, which is there a way to spell out the various remedies the town could pursue to recoup these expenses? And again, that's, I have to ask counsel, but any of the experienced guys here aware of any times we have had to seek such remedies and what those remedies were?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that question, Tara. Has this happened before and what was done to rectify it?
Hasn't been done on my watch.
Good job, Cindy.
I don't recall ever having to do that, but I think the gist of it is here, we have to make sure that the bonding is enough to do it. That's why we, well, in the past, you know, that subdivision in Quinnebog that we got Rich's input as to what the cost would be in the event that somebody bails on the project. So I think that's something we have to continue to do, is to get the town foreman as to what it would cost to do that, to do the road or other improvements.
And it's fine
And
to have,
and make sure the bonding is sufficient
I mean, it's
to
fine to
start
have.
with.
it's
Because if he, as you know, if he contractor goes out of business, goes bankrupt, you know, you can't get the blood out of the stone. He doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
So other than us spending $100,000 for legal fees and not getting anything for it, we've been through that. Or I have, with the oil spill.
Yeah, I think it's fine to have this in here, but that's why it's so important to have a nice scheduled breakdown of costs and have a nice performance and payment bond, because like John,
Right.
you
Yep.
make blood out of a stone once it's all done. That's it. You just gotta
Yeah.
what you got.
I just want to scroll up for 1 second. John, does this thing on partial releases answer, is it a partial answer to your earlier question about phased release of bonds? When and if the commission determines that a substantial portion of the improvements called for in the final plan approved by the commission has been completed, it may recommend one or more partial releases of a portion of the security. The balance of the security at all times shall be sufficient to guarantee completion of all the remaining improvements. Such partial release shall be authorized by the commission. Releases granted shall be in amounts in excess of $10,000. Does that answer one of the questions you had earlier?
Yep.
Okay.
Tara, on that failure to complete improvement, should we put something in there about putting liens on equipment left on the site? Not limited to putting liens on left equipment?
It's not a bad suggestion. Because that is theoretically something that might happen if a developer does go under, right? You wouldn't necessarily have bonded for the cost of their own equipment.
Correct. They'd probably own that outright.
Let me
I wouldn't
check
say abandoned equipment, but you know, any equipment that they have on the site.
That would be a hard sell.
I would think the
It was just a
contractor,
suggestion that the way the town could get some money back, you know?
Yeah,
if the contractor thought, had intentions that he was gonna sneak out and not get this done, he'd move the equipment before,
You're right.
and that
I think,
came to that.
It's exactly what will happen. They'll have it out of there before you could blink your eyelash and let's stop. I'm just telling you, I done the jobs, it happens. So there's nothing you can do about it. You're not gonna be able to put a lien on anybody's piece of equipment.
and I'm wondering how many companies out there own that equipment outright. It's being leased or.
Least, you're right. You're right, Mr. Ice. Most of the equipment
So,
that these.
so they
companies
don't own it. We'd be fighting the lease companies.
You'd be chasing a cat's tail. 75, well, Brian,
Is it a cat or a dog's tail?
doesn't matter, either one.
Okay.
Like I said, just a suggestion for a way to town, you know, if it was left there. If, you know,
Yeah.
If it was left there, if it was left there and abandoned, it's whoever's got the lien on the equipment, or whoever say he owes, or what, it doesn't matter. That's the person that's gonna come in and get it anyway. So there's nothing you can really do about it. All he's gotta do is proof of purchase on a piece of equipment that, well, I own it now, and you can't, even if you put a lien on it, he's gonna come in and take it because it's his piece of equipment.
Yeah, well, similar to that sentence about, liable for such costs in excess of the security. I don't think it does any harm to put in a lien clause in there about equipment. I mean, it's either gonna happen or it's not gonna happen, so.
right.
If you want to do it, that's gonna be a hard sell, but go ahead.
Well, if it's just an example of possible actions,
Yeah, that's all.
it's not prescribing that the town will do that. It's saying that the town could do that if that is proposed, if that seems like a reasonable remedy. It's an interesting question to add to my list of interesting questions for this small section. But that's good. That's good. Let's see. These are just formatting and grammar points from Marla. Add correct citations, same thing. All right, what is this subsection? Release of surety, letter E. Marla has highlighted, the applicant shall be required to file a maintenance bond prior to dedication to the town of public improvements in order to assure the satisfactory condition of the completed improvements following a period of 1 calendar year to correct any defects that may have developed during that period. The standards for maintenance bond are described in section 9. That might not even be a correct citation. Check, although I think it is. now that I think of it, because this is section 8. Article IV, section 9. Okay. All right, so let's read that again. Because she's saying this is something that needs to be reviewed by DPW, but you guys let me know if you think that that is the case. The applicant shall be required to file a maintenance bond prior to dedication to the town of public improvements in order to assure the satisfactory condition of the completed improvements following a period of 1 calendar year to correct any defects that may have developed during that period. The standards for the maintenance bond are described in what should be Article 4, Section 9.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Just be aware that sometimes they're called warranty bonds too. They're kind of the same.
Tara, the only comment I have, the old regs had, the maintenance bond shall be in an amount no less than 25% of the cost of public improvements. If we don't define what that maintenance bond should, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because this isn't the section on maintenance bonds. In fact, this would probably be, I wonder if this should be last in this outline.
Yeah, it doesn't,
I'm
it's
just gonna
like it's separated.
cut and paste this here. Because the very next section, therefore, would be maintenance bonding. Right? Right.
Yep. That works.
Section 9. Oops. All right, so let's go back up and release of surety. So let's just, since we just changed the order there, let's make sure that this order makes sense. The surety shall not be released until the following conditions have been met. A, all improvements of the subdivision or re-subdivision have been approved and or accepted by the designated town official. B, all required monuments must have been set and a sworn affidavit filed by the land surveyor employed by the subdivider stating required monuments have been accurately set as required by these regulations. That sentence is a mess, but I think it's at least
Tara,
accurate.
in there, don't we usually put license or, you know, a surveyor license in the state of Connecticut? You feel that's necessary?
Well, we do definitely refer to that using that terminology elsewhere, so it would be appropriate to continue in kind. So all required monuments must have been set and a sworn affidavit filed by the licensed land surveyor employed by the subdivider stating required monuments have been accurately set as required by these regulations.
But licensed by the state of Connecticut, because that could be licensed by me, you
I
know,
suppose that's true. The land surveyor.
licensed by the state of Connecticut, yeah.
They have to be registered by the state of Connecticut.
All required, okay, required monuments. I still don't like that sentence, but I do think it's accurate. Okay, so improvements have been approved or accepted. Required monuments to be set, sworn affidavit. C, the applicant's engineer or surveyor has certified to the town through the commission and through submission of detailed as-built plans and the as-built certification form in Appendix C1. Check. Citation. The applicant's engineer or surveyor has certified to the town through the commission and through submission of detailed as-built plans and the as-built certification form in appendix that the improvements are in accordance with the construction plans of the subdivision or re-subdivision. As-built plans shall include the site development plan, a grading plan, and a construction plan as described elsewhere in these regulations. Such plans shall show any modifications or changes made, including those during construction. D, warranty deed for new streets and street stubs Also, road frontage along existing town roads where no street line had been established must have been executed and delivered to the selectmen with a copy to the commission. Title to said roads shall be unencumbered. E, the applicant shall file a written agreement executed by the owner of the premises and the applicant in a form approved by the town attorney, which permits the town of Thompson or its officials and employees or independent contractors to enter upon the premises and to perform any and all work necessary to correct and abate any violations of these regulations or any failure to stipulations made by the applicant within the required time. Such right of entry shall be pursued upon the certification of such violations by the commission and shall continue for such time thereafter as is required for the town to remedy such default.
Couldn't two stipulations may just be struck or any failure made by the applicant within the required time?
Yeah, because that doesn't even mean anything in English as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Failure of the applicant. Let's try that again. The applicant shall file a written agreement executed by the owner of the premises and the applicant in a form approved by the town attorney, which permits the town of Thompson or its officials and employees or independent contractors to enter upon the premises and to perform any and all work necessary to correct and abate any violations of these regulations or any failure of the applicant within the required time. Any failure of what?
Is that where the site plan comes in? Is what we're,
Probably, but
because,
yeah,
because
the statement doesn't refer to anything, right? So
yeah, right.
what, or any failure
Of the approved site plan. You know, because that's when we'd be checking to make sure that the individual followed what was on the site plan that was approved.
complete.
Well, this could be at any time. I mean, when is, Cindy, do they file this when they come in with the, at what point is this file, this agreement written and signed?
It's supposed to be at the beginning. I know occasionally we do get that written. And I was gonna bring that up, that probably something in Cindy's checklist is that should be permitted, because it used to be, is that, at least I always did, is that when we get an application in it, then I always go look at the property. And I know one time I walked on the property, it was a town road, and I got called on it. The guy was building another apartment on top of, out at the lake. And he said it was
Right,
storage.
So what question was I asked?
Well, Cindy, do you have that on your checklist? Is that the written agreement by the applicant? You know how you have your checklist of all
Right.
that you check off? Well, I think anytime we have an application on something, we
Right,
ought to get permission to enter anybody, as Tara has it here, to walk the property, go on the property.
It's
think it's-
definitely something that came up earlier about because it was badly worded in an earlier section about that. I think it just said that the town shall have right of entry,
Yeah.
but didn't reference, written permission, which we have since amended.
Oh,
So this,
okay.
would
Alright.
be redundant to that, but not
yeah.
necessarily in a bad way. I mean, you can certainly have some redundant.
I know there are applications where it says that the staff will be, has permission to go onto the property. I believe there, I can check the subdivision application, and you just put it on there when they're applying it, and they check yes, and they don't check yes, then you don't approve the application.
Yeah, there was someplace else that we dealt with this, giving those here in the town the rights to go on to the property.
Right.
Yeah, it was back in Article 3, I want to say, because that's where it talks about everything you have to even have in your application
Yes,
process, right?
yes, yeah, I
But-
think that's where it was.
So then what I would do is look at the application process that you're going to finalize and make sure that the subdivision application has all those requirements.
I think that's what we worked on, and I think it came down to what you just said, Cindy, to make sure that it's in there and that it is signed properly, because nothing was gonna move forward unless all of the paperwork was signed.
Right.
But I think you're adding independent contractors to this. I wouldn't think, like I say, I haven't been there, if you had that in that written agreement previously.
Requirements.
Because if Cindy had to go out and recheck something on that subdivision, I'm relatively sure that the question would come up is what's her expertise in checking the septic system is right or on a given lot. So she probably want to have a contractor come with her.
Yeah, in section 3, it says,
The expertise is where it's shown on the site plan.
I
What do
think in section 3, it says improvements, and this clearly states violations to these regulations. So it's almost like two different wordings.
That refers to improvements, you said?
Yes. Permission to enter to make required improvements in order to make such improvements.
All right,
Failure
so-
of the applicant to make required improvements in order for the town to make such improvements.
All right.
So
let's look-
improvements and violations are two different things.
Right. So let's look at this now, just in plain context again. The applicant shall file a written agreement executed by the owner of the premises and the applicant in a form approved by the town attorney, which permits the town of Thompson or its officials and employees or independent contractors to enter upon the premises and to perform any and all work necessary to correct and abate. Yeah, you're right, that it is actually different, but similar in terms of needing written permission.
Right,
So we have the written agreement here. Okay. Or to abate any violations of these regulations or any failure by the applicant to complete the actions of the accepted plan within the required time is the language I'm proposing. That's what we're saying, right? Failure by the applicant to complete the actions of the accepted plan within the required time.
right.
Right.
Okay.
Have
Go ahead, John.
we been on a subdivision specifying the completion date of that subdivision? Because this is coming up often as to you're saying within the required time. Well, when do we tell that subdivider you have 5 years to complete this project?
Well, is that in your description of phasing? I mean, do we reference phasing?
I thought we had covered that way back, putting the time limit on when they were to be completed, the projects were to be completed. I could be wrong, but I seem to remember we discussed something along those lines. And I think you're right, Tara. I think it might have been in phasing.
I'm trying to remember where phasing is even discussed. Procedure, erosion.
Because we had discussed the time limits, the time frames that the developers felt that they would be able to get the project completed.
Love having this mouse, Brian Santos.
That's the little things in life, right?
It is the little things in life. right, presentation, right, as built, construction plans. Anything about phasing in here? No. Lot sizes, lot sizes.
Well, you read pretty fast.
Well, I'm just looking for titles referencing
I know,
phasing,
I
you know?
I know.
That's lighting, utilities.
If I may, Tara, I
Yes,
don't
sir.
we came to a final conclusion on that because it's gonna be hard to say to a developer or whatever that he's got 5 years to do a project. It also will depend on the size of the project too. Now, if you're gonna put in a subdivision that's going to acquire maybe 5, 6, 7 houses, probably can get it done in a couple, 3, 4 years, you know, depending on the economy too. But if you're gonna go 10, 15, 20 house subdivisions, you know, with a horseshoes and all this other stuff, like say, so to speak, Donovan Drive now, he's been into it for what, almost 3 years now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he predicted that he could have it done within 10. You know, then that depends on if he gets the house lots sold and everything. Again, the economy dictates it, but at least he has the road in, he's doing all the prep work to make it much more sellable to, you know, to prospective buyers. But it's gonna be hard to really put a developer, because if I was a developer, you come in and told me I had 5 years, I'd pull the project. Because it's hard to dictate.
I think
It's hard to dictate.
I think what we had talked about, either that or my brain was working while I was sleeping, which is a possibility. I think we had talked about what the contractor was saying was his time frame as to when he would be able to get it done. With all things considered, with the way the economy is and the changing, the fluctuations and everything else. It wasn't the town saying that you had to get it done at a certain time. It was going by what the contractor was saying.
Exactly, that's the
Yes.
way it should be.
Yes,
It should
that's the
be,
way
and
it should
if
be.
if you read them flyers that we get from Attorney
Burn.
Burn.
Burns, is that there's been court cases about that where contractors didn't complete it. See, John, the downside is that somebody comes in, we don't set a limit and you're talking Donovan Drive, okay, if he done part of it and then in 10 years he decides to come back, well, the people that he sold houses to, the thing isn't complete, you know? So that's why they gotta have some kind of time limit, and I'm relatively sure is that if he came back to commission and gave us an explanation why he's not meeting that schedule, we could adjust it.
So far the only place I see reference to phasing is one word in the requirement for a narrative, and the phasing is just one element of what that narrative describes. I'm still looking, but I think there might have been something in the open space or conservation subdivision section, the open space section probably, that also referred to phasing. So I'm just going to go quickly down to it then.
Oh, I have to agree with you, Mr. Rice, you know, but it's gonna be, it's still, I like the idea, is okay, you know, if he puts in 10 years, then that's what we should do with the bond situation is if he doesn't get it done in 10 years, you know, can we increase the bond? You know, that's where you gotta kind of make the difference up to help cover that. You know,
Well,
to
that's-
protect the people.
That's what was proposed, is that bonding would be reviewed in 3 years.
Okay. And then,
With an escalation of, what do we put in there, 5% or something?
well, that's fair, like
Or what did Brian suggest?
4, 5%. Well, you know, 5%, like that, it's like you lock yourself in for the oil price at $2.50, you're gonna pay $2.50. If the price dropped down to $1 a gallon, you're still gonna pay the $2.50. And if it goes up to $5, you pay the $2.50. So it's roll the dice and see what you get. I get that too, but
So I still, just doing that quick scroll, but I've got quick eyes, see only 2 references to phasing. One is in the general description of the narrative and things that might be described in that narrative. And one is when phasing is part of a subdivision, how it affects the location of open space. Those are the only 2 places I see phasing. So we have not addressed, as far as I can tell from a quick scan, and of course I can go through it more thoroughly as well.
Kara, was it in with the, we had talked about cover sheets and stuff like that. Was it in that area where?
Yeah, it was part of the application requirements.
Yeah.
And one of those is the narrative. And in that narrative, it says the narrative would describe such things as A, B, C, D, and one of those things, the very last thing was actually phasing.
Yes,
But
and that's where,
it didn't further describe anything about phasing, like requirements for it.
well, what kind of I mean, they're coming in with a plan to get it completed. And of course, with most contractors, they're going to want to fall into their plan of completion. In due course, some things happen and it gets messed up, but then they would be able to come back and file for an extension just so that they're not going to leave the town high and dry. But putting that in and then adding the extra, the percentage on there, has the town ever run into this where somebody just up and left the town high and dry? But we did discuss it, and I think that's where it was at the beginning when the paperwork all had to be filled out, so that they gave an example as to how long it was going to take them.
That's a question for the experienced guys. I don't hear them jumping up to say, oh yeah, I remember when this happened.
the only ones that can give an answer to that
It's
would be Mr. Rice and Mr. Blackmore.
I don't recall it.
And I said that earlier, I didn't recall it, but we want to prevent it in the future,
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's, I think we're talking about this because of that little phrase within the required time, but the
Right.
required time, what suggests itself to me is that the required time is a part of what is agreed to, and it doesn't necessarily have, as I think John B mentioned, we don't have a formula for it. The proposer, the applicant, describes their time frame, and then at the end of that time frame, they've either completed it or not. They're either coming to us for an extension, or they
Correct.
appear to be in violation, or abandoning the project or whatever.
Financial difficulty came about, all the little stuff.
Right,
But Tara, if we don't have a time frame when upon our approval, there's nothing for us to come back to. As to, like I say, I'm all, coming back in and getting renewed, that type of thing, or, but I think we just, as somebody we just said, is that it's up to the contractor to give us a number if it sounds reasonable to do that amount of work. I think anybody that's been doing this is that should give us an estimated time but it can't carry on forever, because I feel the people that already, you take that subdivision that we approve, people are moving in, and suppose he bails now, we haven't approved the road or the drainage or anything else on that, what's the one down from my house here?
Money.
Yeah,
Are you talking about
Madison Avenue.
Madison Avenue?
yeah.
Yeah.
So like I say, it's just to have it something in there, because he come back and we don't have any time frame. He said, well, I didn't agree to anything that I'd have it completed.
Yeah, so I think the answer here is in that earlier section in what I think is Article 3. But whatever I just found up there, where I highlighted phasing, to further expand that descriptions of phasing shall include a proposed schedule of action,
A time
Correct.
complete, a time completion date.
right?
to that effect.
And that's not included in the original paperwork? I thought that was.
Cindy?
You asked me a question, I'm sorry.
I
You
was
there?
wondering, yes, the time frame, isn't that included in the original filing paperwork that you get, where they give you an estimate as to how long the project is gonna take? Isn't that put in there?
I don't know, truthfully, because we've had so few subdivisions, I would have to look at the application.
Because honestly, I mean, you come in, somebody comes in and they're gonna build a subdivision. In my mind, there would have to be a time frame in there because, oh, I can finish it in the year 50,900. There has to be something. That's why I thought it was in those original application paperworks. But then again, down the road, if they're not meeting it, there has to be the ability for us to be able to say, where are you on your time frame? Life happens, we get that, things come up, crop up, everything else. But somebody's got to be able to take a look at whatever sheet they've spread up where their time frame shows where they are standing at that particular moment. There should be something that we can look at and say, okay, they're pretty much on schedule, or hey, they're 8 months off a schedule. What's what's going on, and then question them.
Tira?
Yes. Yes,
instead
Alvin?
Yes, instead of required time, I like the idea of phrase. Why not have an 18-month rotating phrase time? In other words, the contractor is obligated to come in and speak to the commission every 18 months on a rotating basis.
Progress report.
Give the contractor an opportunity.
I was
make-
thinking something along the same idea, but I thought a little longer time. Especially if you're talking about a bigger project, maybe have a floating time, but not to exceed 5 years, come in for review. If it's a big project, 5 years, you have a handle on what it is. If it's a small one, it could be less, but I don't know, there has to be just establish a date when he comes in with it, based on how big a project it is, and get a review somewhere halfway on the time or something like that.
So do they have
how
to be
about,
On
how
do
about,
they act-
go ahead, Jane.
a phrase,
Go ahead, Alvin.
a phrase time, let's say it's a rotating basis of every 18 months within a phase of 3 times of 18 months. That gives them 9 years. And if you, let's say it's only 5,
18 months is only 4.5 years.
Three
then
times at 18 months.
in
Yeah,
other words, limiting
Yeah.
the phrase.
yes,
The
4.5,
18
4.5.
What? I,
It just gives the contractor a time for a phase time, not a completed time.
I think that saying that with the large project that every 18 months update us, do they even have to do it in person? They can do it by letter. Just something so that we know they are going along as planned. And then if there's anything, if there's, like I said, life happens, that can be explained in person. But if everything's going along correctly, then they can send an update to the board. to the commission so that we know that they are on their schedule. Because honestly, I don't think, especially somebody that's going to put in a big development, they don't want to go over schedule either because it does cost them money.
So who's gonna monitor that 18-month period?
Well, I was just about to ask Cindy, how often have you been out to, and we'll use our two example subdivisions because they're the ones that have been active while we've all been around, Donovan or Madison?
Okay, so,
And- Go ahead.
so Madison, I've been out there when there was the difficulty with the drainage, a couple of years ago with Marla. She and I went out there and then communicated with Brian. And then I went out there recently, when Rich was still employed by us, so that we could come to some compromises to the binder layer and what was going to happen with the top layer and drain systems. And we worked that out with between the three of us. Actually, I was the negotiator with that, with two of them. And then I went out to the Valleys just recently when he came to us for the approval of the roads.
So in other words, you are going out to inspect for one of two reasons. You're going out for things that are complaint or issue based,
Right,
or you are going out when the developer reaches out to you to communicate that they have reached one of their benchmarks.
right, exactly.
Do you feel like that is enough to control this process based on what people are hearing here? Or would it make sense in this spreadsheet now that we're talking about creating for going forward, where you've got your check the bond to make sure it doesn't need to be increased? You know, go out
yeah,
to X
that's
subdivision at this time.
But
Well,
that's relying on Cindy. I want the contractor to have a responsibility. That's why I suggested a phase every 18 months.
Right, but what the reason I ask it is because I agree that the responsibility should be the developer. It should essentially be a process of doing business to complete the project. What reminds that developer, right? Is it a letter from the ZEO? It says, hey, this 18, let's use 18 months because that works we're talking about. Your 18-month period is about to elapse. We expect to see you in front of the commission.
Or by letter.
Yeah.
Oh.
Does that seem like a reasonable expectation to you, Cindy, to include that in the things that you would be tracking to send periodic letters for? And really, it's not like we're going to have 20 subdivisions going at
Right.
once, right?
yeah, so it's reasonable, but my question of all of you, and I'm just staff, I'm just, listening to what you're saying, what you're going to be requiring. What, remind me again, what is the point of asking them to come to you every 18 months? That just seems to me, if they're renewal, they have to renew it in 3 years. Why are you asking them to come every 18 months?
If I may, Cindy and Tara, is that if individual comes in, he's gonna have a reason why he hasn't reached that benchmark. And I doubt it if we're gonna say, hey, too bad, we're gonna pull the plug on you. No,
Right.
I don't, I think that, you gotta think about any 18-month period, out of that year and a half, he's losing 6 months because of winter, the majority of the time. So, I mean, I hate to ask him and developer
That's
to
why-
be doing more reporting. I mean, he's got a development to build. I think that that time limit, if he, that gives him the flexibility that whatever he sets, he comes in, he says, it's gonna take me 5 years or 10 years to develop it. And that gives him the flexibility of getting it done that time. But every 18 months and come in and tell me, hey, I'm sorry, I'm 2 weeks behind. What are we gonna tell him?
So let's
it's
go
a
back up to
waste of everybody's time.
let's go back up to this idea of the inflation, which is after the third year, there's this possibility of the inflation of the bond. So in other places in the subdivision regulations, we've said, let's stop setting differing sets of standards, right? It's either 3 lots or it's 4, but make it all the same. So why not have that regular interval, not only to be checking on the bond, but at that time, that is a requirement. If there's a bond in play, it's the 5% increase and the progress report.
Exactly. I agree with that.
Does that seem amenable to everyone?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds great to me.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Load it.
I could type. Okay.
Sarah, I hate to go back to what you had before, but is
That's okay.
there anything that that we left out on the, excuse me, I just took a drink of water here. Under the maintenance bond, previously we had a time frame that upon completion, that improvements, the maintenance bond held over for over a year through the winter. We were just trying to check on the road condition,
Yep.
of the frost heaves and everything else. Is that in there somewhere that?
Yep. We just
Okay.
hadn't finished the end of this list. So I think we
Okay,
just
all right.
resolved this one. So then F
Okay.
was any and all bonds with surety agreements, deeds, or other such documents required by these regulations shall be in such form as may be approved by the town attorney. And then the last one, which we just cut and pasted to the end of this section, the applicant shall be required to file a maintenance bond prior to dedication to the town of public improvements in order to assure the satisfactory condition of the completed improvements following a period of 1 calendar year to correct any defects that may have developed during that period. The standards for maintenance bonds are described in Article 4, Section 9 below, and there is
Okay. That's what
maintenance
I was
bonding.
looking for, the
Yeah.
April 30th. Okay.
Yeah, so here we go. Maintenance bond equal to 25% of the cost of improvements accepted by the town. What is this looks like? Oh yeah, that was just a question that I had calculated based on what? That always seems like a really open question to me in the bonding conversation, but a maintenance bond equal to 25% of the cost of improvements accepted by the town will be held until April 30th of the following year after said acceptance, following the release of a performance bond or portion thereof, or town acceptance of improvements. The purpose of the maintenance bond is to protect the town against defective workmanship, materials, or design of improvements. And I don't think there were, oh no, there was one more. But that was just about something that else got moved. Okay, I don't see any more questions that were received or held over from the first pass on maintenance bonding. Does anybody have any questions on this, which is before us?
I have a question on that April 30th date. What happens if they finish on September 2020? Does that mean that bond is dropped on April 30th, 2021? It's because then that only gives them 6 months and not a full year.
Until April
Well,
30th.
Are we saying April 30th of the, okay, you're saying September
If it ends at the end of
2022 and
the year.
April of 23. But
Correct.
But
If
that
they
wouldn't-
finish September of this year, does that come off? Then we get a new calendar year,
yeah,
April 30th. Does that get dropped? Shouldn't it go from the finish date to the finish date instead of to an April 30th? A full calendar year.
Got a good point there.
We had a discussion about that earlier, and it has something to do with not being able to do anything with roads and stuff during the winter. But didn't that come up earlier?
Right, I think Ray's point is that the way this is phrased, it is not clear whether it
Right.
is, again, if it's finishing on September 30th of 2020, if that's talking about April 30th of 2021, which is only 6 months later, or April 30th of 2022, which is a year plus the extra months.
Right.
That would sound more logical.
Right, right. And I suspect that's actually what this is meant to say. Let me see. Will be held until April 30th of the year following the
Completion.
full calendar year.
So it can turn out to be 1 year and 3 months, 1 year and 6 months. Because you have to take into consideration for the winter, for whatever it's about.
A year and 6 months is better than just giving us 6 months.
Well, no,
Right.
you're right.
Right.
But it's hard with the road, if say a road gets approved in September, October, November, you're gonna have to give them that winter, almost like a freebie. So you have to kind of give the 1 year from the date of completion or the acceptance by the town. And then you go to the following year and it can be till April 30th, and he could end up with 1 year and 3 months, 1 year and 2 months, or 6 months, so that's how I'm looking at it.
I think
one
we
way or
just,
the
I think we just need to put an example in here.
Yes,
Good idea.
anything before December 31st, if it's accepted by the town, they got 1 year from that acceptance. So that gets them through that winter to the following December, plus till April of the next year. So we're not gonna P and M all about just a couple, 3, 4 months here or there.
Right.
Is that clear enough? If a project is
Yes.
completed on September 30th, the acceptance shall be 1 calendar year from the completion date, and the bond shall be released on April 30th after the full year has elapsed.
Yeah, that looks better.
Okay,
Yeah,
Much clearer.
After a full year has elapsed.
Yeah, it's understood there. Question, suppose you have bond shall be released on April 30th. Suppose we see some defects that need to be corrected and he hasn't done those by April 30th.
A,
That'd work.
because as you point out correctly, that there are circumstances where the bond may not be released, but you may release
Right.
it as early as April 30th after the full year has elapsed. Yeah,
There you
okay,
go.
there we go. All right, any of the rest of this here?
School's just about out.
School is just about out, kiddos. Okay. We've got, look at that, 17 minutes to spare. Anybody want to go over anything else here before we wrap?
I got a couple of questions, Tara. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, we're doing this because of the developers that you keep saying that are sitting and waiting on this. How many developers are sitting and waiting for this stuff to be done?
Well, I know of 2 who are currently developing plans, but we've certainly had other inquiries. And, people are going to develop plans. Everybody would rather develop a plan that is more favorable for everybody. Now, some of those developers may feel that they have to move forward with the current subdivision regulations. But if we can put in better language, clearer standards, my big pet thing, which is the ability to preserve more open space, and to reduce pavement and pavement costs, you know, why wouldn't they try to hold out for that? But they're not going to be able to do that infinitely. So,
Yeah, I get that. And I just wondered how many there are. And a lot of things that I'm hearing is that there's, and it's not just here, it's in the surrounding communities. I've talked to several other communities, cluster housing, which I am dead set against. It's, to me, that's not something I want to see happen in this town. And I just wondered, how many developers do you know of that this is something that is in their plans?
well,
And who are they?
cluster housing is a synonym for conservation subdivision.
Yeah.
It is specifically designed to preserve more open space, and the balance is that you allow the developer to cluster their house lots closer together so that you get a larger uninterrupted section of
Open
space.
space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you might get that. You also get the difference between the shared driveways and everything else. And it wrecks, it's, in my mind, this is not what this town needs. And I just wondered, you know, because of how many times it's been alluded to that there are contractors sitting and waiting. I don't want it sprung on us at the last minute as to what's going to take place. Because I don't think that this town, and I get what you say about the conservation and everything else, that's a hot word. It's a button, and my homework is still being done on all of this. And as I said, I have talked to other communities. I actually talked to somebody just today who lives in Brooklyn, and the cluster housing is going in on her property next to it. And it's not something that I want to see here in this town. It's a political PC term. And
Well,
that,
certainly people can use it that way,
yeah.
you know, like any other term, but the principles behind it are definitely sound. I'm not inclined to be swayed by house dressing on language. A thing is what it is, right? And if the math and the dimensional requirements and the percentages of land that get preserved are higher, then they're higher. You know, there are ways to accomplish things that I would say this community has said that they value. Some of them may seem counterintuitive based on past patterns. But when you look at unintended consequences of past patterns, like everybody hates suburban sprawl. Suburban sprawl is gross. It spreads communities out. It causes, again, more pavement, fragmented communities, more driving time, you know, neighborhoods that aren't neighborhoods anymore, and the degradation of the landscape. That's a serious concern. And you know, it's certainly possible to have rational disagreements and say, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about this? And but the principles on which conservation subdivisions were proposed are absolutely 100% sound. Now, do all conservation subdivisions work in all circumstances? Probably not. But if you don't offer the developer the opportunity to sort of develop those win-win situations for everyone, right? Keep your housing costs down, keep your construction costs down, preserve your open space, create walkable neighborhoods. If they don't even have the opportunity, they're not going to be able to pursue those things, right? You're never going to get the proof.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I mean, obviously, I would want to see any plans before I, made up any of my minds. I've just seen it in other areas where I've lived, and it was not good. That's why, I want to see the plans that are coming in with these developers that you know about.
Sure.
So that I can make a a good decision as to what is good for the town, but it's not, it's like, we don't know yet. It's all, and I just know that, something, I would like to have this done. You keep saying there's a time frame on this also. The rush to get these ordinances changed. I guess I need that explained to me also, why such, and so many times that these have been revised. The rush to get this done, why is that?
Sure. The main reason is because when we did the overhaul in the zoning regulations, it created some inherent contradictions, right? So you can't have two documents that contradict one another in your regulatory structure for very long. And we've had these contradictions for over a year. Now, we haven't had subdivision plans coming in, but we have had inquiries. So that's why I say I know there's people who are kind of waiting to see how this plays out. And at some point, each of those developers is going to make a choice. Well, I'm going to, suck it up and make my proposal based on what's here, or I'm going to wait and see if the better structure is available to me, right? And we can't control that. But go ahead, Alvin.
Yeah, before we run out of time, a little thing more mundane. Going back to section 8, form of surety.
Yep.
Maybe it's just me, but I don't like to have an adjective hanging out there without a noun. Okay,
Where are you? I
right
don't even-
here, under C, a bond contract naming the developer as the principal. Well, principal, even though it's got a capital P, is still an adjective. Why not a principal authority?
I think that is an actual term as the principal.
Oh, okay. Just because it's got a capital P.
Yeah, I think that is actually the term of use.
Okay. That's it. Like I said, Monday.
No. Oh, all comments are valid comments. To get back to what Jane was asking about. So that is one piece. And the other is that, we have been working on this, right? So I always say nothing ever gets done without a deadline. That deadline that we've suggested for the end of the fiscal year, which is June, is not a hard deadline. It is a target, so that we are working towards something on a schedule. If we need more time, we're going to take more time.
Okay, all right, that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Okay. All right, that gives me some things to think about.
Okay, and you can always,
Thank you.
and I know that you work, Jane, but if you ever have the time and want to come in and sit down and actually look at some of this stuff side by side, some of the examples that I have in the textbooks, happy to do that.
Okay,
Anytime.
thank you, thank
Sure.
you.
Okay, anybody else got anything else for tonight? We're coming right up on it.
I got a question for Cindy.
Yes,
Are you in the office tomorrow?
yes, I am.
Okay,
I
got a
I
young
have
girl that
a
came
site
in.
visit at 8:30 in the morning, and then I'll be in probably 9:15, 9:30.
Okay, I'll give you a call tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
Okay, guys, good work.
Good night.
Yep,
Have a good night,
night.
everyone.
Night.
Good night.
All right.
yep.